So moving into the actual sessions itself, now we have the exact same split, right? In the first year of training, we're probably just going to want an overall split. We're going to be moving into more tailored splits as we go through these. But if we start to look at this, our day one here is going to be an upper body, day two, lower body, rest, then upper, then lower, just like the last split. But where this changes is now that we're moving into a standing fly in our A series. And the reason why we're doing a standing fly, and this is ideally a high to low fly, is so we can get the shoulder into a little bit more extension, which a lot of people don't have, which means we can go through a greater range of motion on the incline Smith machine press. So it's a slight pre-exhaust, which is progressing from the previous block, but also allows you to get more range of motion on the bigger lifts, meaning we can get more out of it. Now, here we notice that because we're doing the incline press now, where we focus on the flat and the shoulder press in the previous exercise. So this exercise here is our decline variation, a high to low fly. And here is an incline variation, still fitting in with that 90-degree principle. We're now changing the focus of our triceps from shortened to lengthened. And the same thing with our other exercises here. We're focusing slightly more in different lines of pull and different points of flexion. Is probably a better way of saying that. So just small changes there, but obviously tailor these target areas to your client. On day two, right, we're now sort of being a bit more targeted with our split squat, go into the rear for elevated split squat to open up that rec fem. All right, and then bringing our Romanian deadlifts as phase one. And again, very, very similar here, but we've moved some of this stuff later down the line. And then we've now added in a bit of QL work, which just helps stabilize the spine. It's an area that people aren't thinking about. When we get the obliques and the QL strong, most people don't get a lot of back pain. So this is just a thought process here. And then here, we're going to be moving into our big decline exercise, which in this case is going to be our tricep dip. So this means we can want to lean forward slightly, encouraging a bit more shoulder extension and actually training that after working it through the incline curls into some of the exercises that we've done in the previous phases, some of the rib cage and pelvis stuff. Now we can start maybe moving into these after a good 4, 5, 6 months of training. Then we're going to go into our incline dumbbell press and our second exercise, as well as some back work, and then just some bigger lift external rotator work in here. Then EDT. So this stands for escalating density training. And we're going to move into a cross body split here. So all our posterior chain, like lower pull, hamstring, glutes, are going to be with our upper push exercises, and our quads are going to be with our back. This allows us to get a little bit of a blood shunt here, creating that cardiovascular response that we're looking for. And our aim here is to accumulate a lot of overall volume, right? We're not looking at taking any one muscle to true failure here. We're just wanting to take the system to a level of fatigue. Now, to give you an idea where this could be really, really useful for a client, I'm going to give you a great example. So I had a client who got up to 152 kilo deadlift to the floor, female, very, very strong woman. And when she got to around about the 120 mark, we saw signs that she was just spending a bit too much time in the strength phase. Her nervous system was showing signs that I was just kicking it too much. So her sleep was getting a little bit impaired, and she was getting a bit freaked out, and her anxiety was going up outside the gym, but also in the gym, where she was just mentally checking herself out of the lift before she did the lift. So I knew that I needed to move into a high volume phase as a deload. Now, I could have chosen many things here. I could have chosen the local stimulus we've done before. I could have chose heavy light, 6, 12, 25. There's a bunch of options, but I chose EDT. Why? Because, right, and as we move into the program itself, what you'll see here is we now have a very sub-max weight. So we're bringing the weight down, right? So we think, oh, well, that's taking one step back. Yeah, but the aim is to take 2 steps forward in the next phase. And we're not now increasing the repetitions to get a high volume strength endurance. We're increasing the amount of sets. So we're still doing 6 reps or 4 to 6 reps here, but we're now doing as many sets as possible within a 20-minute time limit. So you set the clock, she'll go deadlift, incline dumbbell press, and her rest is whatever she needs just to keep going. And we're just going to accumulate fatigue. We're not lifting very heavy weight. We're just accumulating a lot of fatigue by a high number of sets. And the aim over this 2 to 3 week block is to try and beat the number of sets each week. Again, this is now starting to push the volume really, really high. So we can't do this block for very long. But what this did is it allowed us to calm down her nervous system and also got her into the habit of walking up to the deadlift bar and picking it up. She now wasn't thinking about it because she's against the clock. So when we move back into a high intensity phase, into a intensification phase, she just walked up and picked up 125, no problem at all. So as you can see here, our first exercise, 20 minutes on the clock, back and forth. Then we increase the repetitions and do 15 minutes on the clock with slightly more stable exercises. Then our more isolation lifts with 10 minutes on the clock, back and forth here. And then our day 2, I'll obviously repeat each of these. So we'll do day 1, day 2, rest, day 1, day 2 again. It's the same now with our opposing muscles. So barbell back squat into a pull down. If someone can do a chin up, that's great. But obviously understand the amount of sets here. So you might want to do something more stable. Leg press into chest supported row. And then we're going to be looking at abs and triceps. Now moving into our strength phase here, same split as before, but we're now creating a little bit more of a progression here by going into 5x5. So we now increased that intensity from the previous time and now really now pushing us into sort of that strength stimulus. So now we've got this barbell back squat here. We've now started moving to some big lifts in our B series. So the safety bar brings the load forward, makes it slightly more quad dominant to bring up the quads to bring up that back squat. And then in here, because the quads are the focus of this goal, we're now moving to a walking lunge, which gets a little bit of length of range glute, but also an extra way to load the quads, and as well as a bit more calf raise and our standing farmer's walk. Now our incline press, because remember the 90-degree principle. So now our incline press is the left we want to try and bring up because that's what we've been working on the hypertrophy phase. And now we're going to bring up the floor press and the chin up here, just to kind of, again, the chin up allows the shoulder blades to move. The floor press allows you to bring up the triceps, will help bring up the incline press. And as the triceps are the focus here, we can see here that that's going to be focused on in our C series. Now into here, we're now going into a snatch grip deadlift. So from the rack pull, we've progressed the range of motion, but also been a very lat focused lift here. So we can now really, really develop that back and get that bit really strong. And the range of motion isn't as big as a full conventional deadlift, right? We've now go into a safety bar box squat. So similar thing, get used to that safety bar, but now it's more of a vertical shin where it's almost like a low bar that we're going to hinge into that box, keep tension, come back up. So it's a very big carryover to that deadlift exercise. Then we've got our main row as our here, and then with a little bit more glute work. This is more length and range glute. This is more short and range glute, and our bicep work in here. And then in our day 4, we've now taken that military press, rather than having it from pins, we've now added a little bit of a bigger range of motion, going just for a seated military press into our decline barbell press. And then we've got a little bit extra tricep work here. We've also added a bilateral SOTS press, which is basically doing a shoulder press in a deep squat. So we can just practice holding the position, which will have a good carryover into our next phase, where we really try and peak the squat. So that is an overview of this block. As always, any questions, let me know.